Welcome to the show. IB Nation Sports Talk up and rolling. He's Vince. I'm Sean. Day 3 of the two of us together on this thing.
That's a very good point. I kind of forgot about that, to be honest with you.
I know.
But hey, it's how I like to cap off my evenings.
Yes. Yes, indeed. And we're back at our regular time
tonight
because we had no craziness today. Vince is well, he's been back at school for a week, but today was like day 1 of the students back in town.
It all becomes real. Like I can no longer wear shorts and flip-flops, to school. I've actually got to throw on the khakis, and actually look presentable and actually deal with students today. So it was as chaotic as you might imagine, bringing 3,300 kids into a building at once, and most of them didn't bother to look at their schedule or anything prior to walking in the door, or their bus number, or anything like, because it's whatever pulls up in front of the house, you just get on and you figure it out. But no, it was a good day. It was good to see a lot of the kids that I actually enjoy, so that was fun. And kicking off a new school year, man.
Rocking and rolling and whatnot.
Right.
Just you can't wear shorts to the building anymore now that they're back in town.
Got to put the chicken legs away for a little while.
That's right. It is Mailbag Day, so get your questions into the mailbag. We'll get to some of those here in just a minute. I wanted to ask you, Vince.
Yes.
We've been in this business, however you want to define the business, sports media, Notre Dame, whatever. Like back in my day, back in the time when I worked at 2 different radio groups, and we did Notre Dame stuff, and I would always get hit up for Notre Dame football tickets or basketball tickets or what.
Sure.
I'm curious, have you ever had the people, hey, can you get me tickets? That kind of stuff. Have you gone through that in your time?
Multiple ways. So there's the do you have tickets crowd? Like, can you get me tickets crowd? There's that crowd. And then there's also the crowd, which really to no fault of their own, you're like, do you know people that can use tickets or they will buy tickets? Do you know people? It's like, not really. Don't really have people that want to shell out the money for the tickets, to be perfectly honest with you. If you're giving them away, I know a kid that would love to go, but
exactly.
There's no way the people I hang with are going to be able to afford football tickets. But, they always think that we have access to tickets for some reason. And I guess to their credit, back in the day, they used to give a pair of tickets to media members, like way back in the day. And while we were working, your significant other and somebody else could go to the game.
Yeah.
That has long since gone away.
I think it was about the time, because I got those for a few years. I think it was about the time around the stadium expansion, it seemed like, because they obviously, remember they actually reduced the actual capacity inside the stadium by doing some of the renovations.
Oh, the Crossroads you're talking about?
Yeah.
It was before then even. Like, I feel like
I can't even remember.
I feel like when you and I first started doing stuff together 20 years ago, you had a pair of tickets and those dried up within the first couple of years. So
they went away. I got them back at some point. I can't remember,
Gotcha.
how the whole thing worked out. Yeah. Had them, didn't have them.
Yeah.
All that different stuff. But especially working at the radio stations where they carry the games would always at some point get hit up for tickets, and it's like, I'm not Ticketmaster. There's not a pile of tickets sitting around here that we just throw around. Because like at the radio station, especially, like regardless of which station it was, now the station gets access to tickets, but they have to pay for the tickets. They don't just get the tickets.
That's a good point.
And like anytime, like football tickets, you could never get. And because what ended up happening would be the sales staff, who was supposed to be, selling ads for the various Notre Dame broadcasts, they would always control the tickets. And they're throwing them out different perks. Hey, buy a package and you get some tickets or whatever. Because like even like the only opportunities we ever had to get like even basketball tickets or hockey tickets, it would always be like you'd get an email like 4 hours before the game would start. Hey, anyone want tickets for tonight's game? You know, because basically we didn't end up giving them away to a client. So I guess you lowlifes on air can get a couple tickets if you want them, and it's like 4 hours before the game. Who's got, time even for that? What made me think of it is there's like a friend of mine from many, many years ago. I've literally probably seen him once in the last 30 plus years.
Wow.
But like connected with him on social media and all that stuff. And I hadn't, he hit me up a few years back. I think it was when Notre Dame went to Michigan, and he lives in a completely different state. And he, all of a sudden I hear from him out of the blue after I haven't heard from him in a while. He's like, hey, can you get me and my buddies tickets to the Notre Dame Michigan game? There's like 8 of us, and we're all Irish fans, and we're going to Notre Dame, Michigan. And it's like, well, 1, it's at Michigan, so how do I have access to those? 2, 8 guys. Yeah, like I've just, again, like I've got access to a stack of tickets for 8 guys who I don't know, and I'm gonna hit you up. Well, this same guy over, I guess it was probably last winter, I again only hear from him, when he decides that he needs tickets. The funniest thing is, like I knew him, we were in the Army together, and he's from West Virginia. And I was like the 1988 national championship game. We're watching that game together, and he's pulling for West Virginia. I'm pulling for Notre Dame. He never showed any inkling that he was a Notre Dame fan. But then, like 20 years pass, and all of a sudden he's the biggest Notre Dame fan in the world, and he's hitting me up for these tickets all the time. But he's like, hey, I'm coming in for the Florida State game. Or no, before he told me that, he hits me up. And he's like, hey, I'm thinking about coming to a game. And I'm like, okay, cool. Whatever, meet up, whatever. And I was like, what game you coming to? And he's like, whatever game you can get me tickets for.
Hold on. Hold that thought. Let me see what I got here.
Exactly. And I went back to, look, dude, that well dried up a long time ago.
And even if it wasn't dry, you wouldn't have gotten 8.
Yeah.
Like, come on, man.
And then he hits me up for Florida State tickets for this year.
Really?
Well. Yeah. So
here's the link. Here, you should have just sent him the link to like StubHub.
Yeah, that's exactly.
There you go.
Right.
Found 8 together.
Enjoy your trip, bro. Yes. Enjoy your trip. Tickets will not be forthcoming. But that's just one of those, again, like we used to get those, here or there, whatever. It was great when it was there. And like, when you had them, you could do so. Like Jesse would go to games. Sometimes my wife would go to games or whatever. When the BCS national championship game, that was actually like, we had the option as like media members going to that game. We had to pay for them, but we could each buy like a pair of tickets. So I got, like Jesse and a friend of his, a pair of tickets for that game. Again, we had to pay for them, but that was cool. Like just the fact that you could do that.
Yeah, right.
Going covering the game. So
100%.
Yeah.
So I have a funny story that I feel like I need to relay to IB Nation. So when I first started doing these shows, I would hang my flag back here, not unlike your flag in your background, right?
Right.
My IB Nation flag. And then, I had this awesome sign made for me by Charlie Castelline, one of, IB Nation. And he offered to make this sign. He's like, I've always wanted to make something like that. So he made me the sign. So down comes the flag, up goes the sign. And I decided to put the flag in my office at work, right? Hanging in my office. Well, the other day I did a show from the press box at the high school. So I could keep my eye on the scrimmage, that my kid was playing in. And so I brought the flag out of my office and I pinned it up behind me at the press box, right? Well, of course I left and I forgot it there. And so I had to run back up and I grab it and I just throw it in my back seat. I'll take it to the office tomorrow. No big deal. Threw it in the back seat. A couple days go by. I had a big box in the back seat with a bunch of stuff I had to send back to Gatorade, my summer job at Notre Dame. For those who don't know, I work at Notre Dame in the summer in charge of Gatorade for all the summer camps, right? We distribute Gatorade for all the summer camps. And Sean has worked with me before. Jesse worked for me. I've been doing this for a really long time. So long story short, you got to send back stuff at the summer, and then they send you new stuff at the beginning of the summer, whatever. Well, somebody accidentally mailed his IB flag back to Gatorade headquarters.
Uh-oh.
Because it went into the box that I was going to send back, and I didn't even look in the box. I just taped it up, put the prepaid label on it, took it to the FedEx store, and mailed it back. And then I'm looking in my car, and I'm like, I think I mailed my flag to Gatorade. So I type up an email, and I'm like, hey, on the off chance you look in that box, there might be a blue flag in there with a big IB and a shamrock. You're probably not going to find it, but whatever. A couple days later, I get an email back. Hey, I found your flag. Where do you want me to mail it to? Got it in the mail today when I got home from work.
Nice.
So it's going back up, baby. I was so afraid to tell Brian. I was like, can you order me another flag? Because I mailed it to Gatorade headquarters.
Oh, man.
So, yeah. So all is right in the world. I get to hang my IB flag back up in the office tomorrow. So happy. So happy.
Glad it's back. Glad it made it back. Glad that they were like, didn't, give you more pushback. And it sounds like they mailed it pretty quickly, too.
Because I'm pretty sure it just went to like a warehouse. And I know it went to a different place than like my contact is. Like he's in Chicago. I'm pretty sure I mailed it back to someplace in Ohio. How they found it, I have no idea. But yes, Tommy, I got super lucky. So I don't have to go to the boss and beg for a new flag, which is always a good thing.
No kidding. Made it through. All right. Well, it is mailbag night, so get those questions in the chat, and we will do our best to answer them. Couple of similar questions. Sean says, what do you feel happened to Rocco to fall off during camp? And Salty says, Rocco seems to be in a tight battle for a starting position. Has he fallen off, and or are others surging past him? So we will start with the Rocco Spindler. What do you think, Vince?
Well, again, we don't get to see a ton of practice, right? We saw one full practice, no pads, and then we've seen periodic 5 periods. Now, in those 5 periods, it seemed like Rocco was getting more time early than he was later, right?
Mm-hmm.
I saw a post on the board today that somebody was kind of asking this exact same question, and Brian was pretty direct. He's like, look, we don't know what's happening. Like, we don't know if he's starting. We don't know if he's third string. We're just not there enough to really know. Based on the 5 periods, it appears that he's like third string guard all of a sudden when he was a starter just last year. I don't know if that's accurate or not. I don't know if that's going to be the case. We're going to get a depth chart next week prior to the Texas A&M game, and then kind of we'll all find out together, to be perfectly honest with you. I would be shocked if he's got completely passed up in his third string, but stranger things have happened. So I don't want to, be my normal self and be like, there is no way that happened. I'm not going to say that. We honestly don't know. We don't know what happened. Is Pat Coogan starting at guard? Is Rocco starting at guard? Is Sam Pendleton starting at guard?
Does Rocco show up at number 2 on the depth chart behind whoever it happens to be?
Right.
Like you said, it would be really surprising for him to be locked in a battle. And just like a week and a half or so ago, they're talking about how close this battle is with Rocco Spindler and Pat Coogan. And the next thing you know, Sam Pendleton has, maybe springboarded past both of them. I think that's the odd thing, like Sloppy Joe says, getting passed by better players. That's the other side of this is, has Spindler really fallen that high, or has Pendleton and or Coogan just played that well in Joe Rudolph and Mike Denbrock's eyes? And like you said, we just haven't been able to see it enough to evaluate it. And, there's nothing for us to base it on other than a bunch of reps against air, basically.
Correct.
And seeing him do some position drills, and like, that's pretty much it.
Right. It's just to to be honest with you, there's a lot of people out there, whoever, doesn't even matter who take what we see in those first 5 periods as gospel. I think that's a little dangerous because I don't know how gospel what we're seeing in some drill work is. And the coaches aren't doing us any favors by confirming nor denying any of those questions, right? They're like, well, there's been a lot of competition and, so the reality is nobody actually truly does know except people inside the program that are at practice and see who comes out with the 1s, see who comes out with the 2s, and that's it, right? I mean, nobody else really knows. And that, to be honest with you, I feel like they're keeping this pretty tight-lipped, which is pretty impressive based on how many eyes are actually on practice and how many sources there are and, things like that. I'm actually surprised we don't know a little bit more, but I would hesitate to speak the gospel of Sam Pendleton and, Anthony Knapp as starting because of what we've seen in the first 5 periods.
Yeah.
That's all. Maybe it is, but I don't feel comfortable just projecting that to the world that this is what's happening.
I don't disagree with that at all. If Mike Denbrock increases the role and number of wide receivers in plays, will this dampen the recruiting interest of elite tight ends for Notre Dame?
It will not, because Mitchell Evans is still going to have a great year. There's no doubt about it. That what's going to change is the way that they recruit the position. So for the past, 10, 15 years, Notre Dame has attempted to get the 2 best tight ends that they can possibly get in each class. I think that's going to be narrowed down to 1 from here on out. I don't think that they're going to attempt to recruit 2 per class. I think it's going to be 1 per class. And, maybe 1 per class and then a flyer or something like that, maybe every other year, that type of deal. I just think instead of trying to recruit 2 high-level tight ends, they're going to narrow it down to 1 because they still have an amazing track record with tight ends, right? I mean, every tight end that has started for Notre Dame, I think in the last 15 years, has been drafted. Like, that's an amazing thing to say. Great tight ends are still going to want to come to Notre Dame. I just don't think they're going to recruit en masse like they have in the past. I think it's just going to be 1 a year. Yeah,
I agree with that. And they are going to have to, look at the numbers a little bit differently. And I think that there's an offensive line question in there as well that we'll get to here in a little bit. But yeah, I think that's it. Like, if you're not going to be as 12 personnel focused, there's obviously not a need to go out and bring in that many tight ends in every class. But the fact that the offensive court, they're still going to use the tight end will still be a big part of the offense. And as you said, I mean, assuming Mitchell Evans stays healthy, he'll be a big part of the offense this season, just like Eli Raridan could still be a big part of the offense. And they've got some talent with those younger guys as well. And so, and the fact that the offensive coordinator is the tight ends coach,
there
will still be a place for him. And then I think that they'll, as you said, they'll still go out and look for high caliber, top end, 4 or 5 star, if possible, type tight ends. You just don't have to bring in as many in every class.
Right.
Exactly.
Agreed.
Sorry, I've got itchy eye.
Oh, it's that time of year, brother.
I know.
Man.
Joe says, can you do a brief segment in a future show about home game weekend events with current events schedule? I saved the article from a few years ago, but don't know if it is applicable.
Oh, Joe, this is Notre Dame. Nothing changes.
Now, they don't do as many. They don't do pep rallies for every game now, though. Is that right?
You know what? You may be right about that. I mean, I feel like they do them for all the home games, though. Maybe I'm wrong, and those are usually on Fridays, and they've been doing them outdoors. Because back in the day, they used to have them in the basketball arena, or way back in the day, they used to do them at Steppen Center. But they've been doing them on
pep rally in years.
They've been doing
decades probably.
I haven't been to one since I was in high school, to be honest with you. I remember freshman year going to a pep rally because I wasn't on the dress list for the varsity football. It was a Friday night, and we were walking around in our football uniforms like we were cool. It was like, well, my team was playing at the time, so how cool really are we? But yeah, so it's been that long since I was at pep rally. But anyway, they usually do it on Irish Green, I think, out in that green space, kind of south of campus.
Mm-hmm.
I assume they do it for all home games, but honestly, I haven't followed it that closely.
I'll do what I can, though, Joe. I'll see what I can find out, because I don't even know, like, things have changed. Like, I don't think they do the luncheons like they used to. There's so much that's changed here in recent years. And I think that some of that had to do with Brian Kelly, to be honest. But
I want to say they have something on the website that would tell you kind of like, what's up, what's going on campus. You know what I mean? Here we go. Game day. They want you to download the Fighting Irish app. So my guess is everything will be on the app, but it's also on the website, so you can click and get traditions and events. I'll tell you what, I'm going to go ahead and put this link in the chat.
It's probably a good idea.
And there you go. So you can click that link. You can either download the app or you can continue scrolling down, and there's some good stuff in there about what, traditions and events and, things like that. Football Friday is what they call it. Apparently now, so you can go tour the stadium. That's kind of cool. So yeah, stuff I didn't even know.
I didn't either. I had no clue.
Yeah,
DK wants tickets to a home game. So
DK, come on now. Sure, they're in the mail.
Right,
they're in the mail.
Tommy wants to know if we have a football game to watch tomorrow night. If not, would you like one?
Well, his high school must be playing tomorrow night.
Thursday night game?
Why are they playing on Thursday?
No kidding.
Come on, Tommy. Who plays on a Thursday?
Thursday night?
It's too early for Maction. There's no Mac going on. Mac doesn't start doing middle of the week stuff until about halfway to 3/4 of the way through the season. So there's no Maction to my knowledge. And I don't think that there's any college football going on until Saturday. Now, maybe I'm mistaken.
Yeah, I think there's 4 games Saturday, and that's it. So I don't think there's any college.
There you go.
Tomorrow.
There you have it. Yeah, they're all on Saturday that I can see.
Andre wants to know how good the Notre Dame women's basketball team is going to be this year.
Oh, that's for you, buddy.
What's also scary, we could lose 4 players this year.
Yeah.
Off this team that could get drafted. I mean, you're right. Like I've said all along, with everything that they've got, getting Miles back, add that to Hidalgo, plus Sonia Citron, plus Maddie Westbeld, the 2, was it just 2? Yeah, 2 transfers that they added, Liza Carlin and Leah King. They're stocked in the front court now. You add Kate Koval, and in case you didn't see, I don't even know if we've talked about it on this show, but posted an interview that I had with Kate Koval last Friday. So you can check that out on the Irish Breakdown YouTube channel if you're interested in that. Kate Koval interview, of course, in our podcast feed as well. But I mean, they're going to be stacked. They're going to be loaded. Final 4 is the goal. National championship is the goal. They're going to be a legitimate contender with, the combination front court and back court. And you're absolutely right. You could have 4 players get drafted, but the recruiting is
there's a lot behind them too.
That they're still going to be fine for the next few years. But this is a loaded team. It's
time to make a run. I mean, they're set up to make a run, right? I mean, barring any kind of injuries or those kind of setbacks. But I mean, this roster is put together to make a run, and those ladies who could have left are coming back to make a run. I mean, they're not coming back to just play. I mean, they're coming back to make a run, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's going to be a fun season to watch. I can't imagine they're going to be tested. Don't get me wrong, but it's going to be a fun season. I'll leave it at that.
Well, I mean, they've got non-conference games with Texas, UConn, and USC, like those 3 games right there. And that's what's great about like the women's game is like they're not afraid to play each other.
No doubt.
Now, granted, the Texas game is that ACC SEC challenge, so that's kind of like an arranged marriage kind of thing. But still, like USC is probably going to be a top 5 team. They're going to play them. UConn, like the question's going to be, there's so many good teams. Like, who are the top 5 teams going to be when that poll comes out? Because I think just right now, there's probably at least 8 teams going into the season who have very realistic expectations that they're going to at least get to the Final Four this season, and Iowa will not be one of them. So,
just talk about trying to strike while the iron is hot.
Yeah,
the iron is now in Indianapolis. So,
yep. DK asks, who would you rather see break a Notre Dame record for yards in a season, running backs or wide receivers?
No, wide receivers. And the reason for that is that would look, the running backs are going to get theirs, as they say. But if the wide receivers are breaking records, that means this offense is going to be borderline unstoppable. So it's wide receivers for me.
I say wide receivers as well. We've been waiting for a true breakout for the wide receivers as a group. And, again, I realize, like, it seems longer than it's been, but it's, we're what, 4+ years now 5 years since Chase Claypool and then Miles Boykin before that as well. Like, those were the last 2 legit type guys they had at wide receiver. And we need to see that become a real part of the Notre Dame game plan.
Sure.
Again. So that's why the running backs are going to get theirs. Let's see the receivers do it. Wicked E Whack. Would you rather have an offensive line or defensive lineman playing in the championship game? Who had the harder road to travel?
Hold on, I got to think about this one for a second.
I'm not sure I completely get the question.
So, like, me personally, would I rather play on offense or defense? Basically, I mean,
would you rather be an offensive lineman or defensive lineman? Okay, I read it wrong.
I've always had a very large appreciation for offensive line and the way they have to do things together and what they're able to do, and just an underappreciated bunch, in my personal opinion, especially from an individual standpoint. So I'll go offensive lineman. I would have loved to be blessed with the size of an offensive. I feel like I could have been a good offensive lineman, Sean, if I was blessed with that kind of size.
I go defensive lineman. Like, I always had the most fun playing defense. Just pin your ears back and get after the quarterback, slam some bodies around in there. You don't have to worry about, grabbing and stuff like that. You don't get called for holding and whatever else. Just get after it. Get after it as much as possible. So I'd go defensive lineman.
There you go.
Like, who has the harder road to travel? I don't know. I would think it would be a little harder being an elite offensive lineman, just because, even though you're called an offensive lineman, you're basically playing defense, a lot of times, unless it's a run play and then you're taking it at the guy, like if you're pass blocking, which so much of the game is pass blocking now, you're kind of playing defense and you're reacting to sort of what you see in front of you. So I'd go D lineman.
I just don't ever see myself being athletic enough to be like a good D lineman. I just make me big. Just make me big.
Well, there's that too. Like, neither one of us is big enough to have done either one of those things. So I guess we can all dream.
Yeah, I know, right?
Speaking of which, with a young offensive line and the Jasquatch's absence, what are the tactics Mike Denbrock will use against A&M to mitigate the vulnerabilities?
Get the ball out quick, get it to the perimeter, RPO game. You can do all kinds of stuff. I mean, you can option a guy at the end of the line of scrimmage so that now your tackle is doubling and climbing. I mean, there's a lot of things that you can do. You can also take it right at some of these better or defensive linemen in the run game. There's an adage out there that you run the ball right at the best player. And I have a lot of faith that Mike Denbrock is going to be just fine. I mean, losing one guy does not a win for A&M make. That's the way I see it.
And I mean, find Nick Scourton, I guess, their edge rusher, and figure out where he is right away, and based on what those matchups are looking like, you obviously try to avoid that. And then, like you said, like I would rather run right at a good edge rusher like Scourton than have him coming off the edge at me. But again, like we've talked about how like all the different things that they can do with the different personnel that they have, whether it's Jeremiah Love either in the backfield or lined up wide. And I was actually thinking of some things that because we've had the requests for the whiteboard. And I think that next Tuesday, Jesse will probably do some whiteboard, but I was kind of trying to come up with some ideas that would be good for the whiteboard. And actually some of this is kind of what I was thinking about,
Yep.
So.
Yeah, I mean, look, what do you want to do to a defense? You want to put a defense in a bind, right? And what I mean by that is you want to make them think. We talked about Notre Dame's defense and how they don't just react, right? Don't think, react. Analysis by or paralysis by analysis. All of those things. You want to put the defense in a bind, make them make a decision, and with the RPO game, make them wrong. You can't be super athletic and coming downhill if you're trying to decide whether you should stay up, stay down, do different things. And so you want to put these guys into conflict, right? You want to put Nick Scourton into conflict. Don't let him just pin his ears back and go. You want to make him wrong enough that he has to start thinking about it and deciding what he wants to do and things like that. So that's what you want to do offensively. And like I said, there's a million different ways to go about it. Shifts, motions, however you want to do it. There's a million different ways to do it. And like I said yesterday, right? Or maybe it was the day before. I can't even remember now. But Mike Denbrock called himself a mad scientist. I subscribe to that theory. I'll just say that.
He's smarter than us. He's got a really mobile the mobile quarterback, Riley Leonard, will play a part in this as well. But I've got a lot of confidence that he'll be able to do what he needs to do to keep them off balance and keep them guessing.
Right.
Enough. I mean, you're going to have a good, you got a good coach on the other side of the ball as well. But I think they'll be in good shape. USMA 87. The line for A&M is -3 over under 46. Man, so the line must have just moved because I saw it's still 2.5. So I think some money must be coming in now at this point. -3 over under of 46. What do you think?
Just means when I take Notre Dame on the money line, I'm going to make even more money. That's what that means. I don't know if all the money's coming in on the Texas A&M side and they're trying to get Notre Dame people to ante up. I'm not sure. That's not usually the way it goes. But, hey, keep that line moving. That's fine. I'm cool with that. Keep that line moving, and I'll just make more money on the deal.
So the 46 is the number that I'm looking at, and that is now I think you think Notre Dame is going to score a lot. To me, that number is a couple points higher than the ballpark that I'm thinking about.
That I would agree that 46 is high for a couple of reasons. I think Notre Dame has a great chance of scoring 4 times. Let's just say that. So whether that's 28, 24 in that neighborhood,
27, right? Yeah, whatever.
Yeah, I'm cool with that. I just have a very hard time seeing Texas A&M score 4 times. Okay, so even if Notre Dame scores 28, for example, I don't know that I see the rest of those points coming from Texas A&M. I would actually take the under of 46, and it's not because I don't believe in Notre Dame. It's because I actually do believe in their defense. So I think 46 is a little high, to be honest with you.
I like the under, but it's also not a number that I would put any money on.
That's fair too.
Because it, season opener and all these different variables, we haven't seen it yet. Like it's just my gut is telling me that it's going to be under. But again, like I'm only talking about like a 2 or 3 point ballpark of just like the number that I've had in my head for the last week or two. Like so, I'm not confident enough to throw anything at
Fair.
at a number like that, considering we're talking about 2 or 3 points in the season opener.
And it's a game one. That's the key, right? It's game one, new quarterback, new offensive coordinator, basically
new head coach
offensive
on one
line.
side with new coordinators.
I mean, there's a million scenarios and variables that we're all wondering about, and to be super confident about certain things, I think is a fool's errand as well.
Yeah, interesting. USMA says FanDuel has -3 and 46.5, and FanDuel is basically the only app that I, use most of the time, and they were still at 2.5 as of maybe a day and a half ago, something like that. So, again, like all that means at this point is money.
100%
coming in.
They need, what's the goal, right? The goal is to have as much money on both sides of the equation so that they're not losing a bunch of money. I mean, that's the goal. And so they must be getting more money on one end if they need to, shore up and make sure they get some money on the other side. That's really all that it means. But
well, look, we're still talking about a field goal game in a season opener on the road, so
sure.
Whether it's 1 point, 2.5 points, 3 points, it's basically a pick 'em game, and Texas A&M is getting the advantage because they're the home team in this game.
Yeah.
So
and DraftKings has -3, 46.5.
Okay.
So for what that's worth.
Chief Brody wants to know if Notre Dame wins if Riley Leonard throws a pick 6.
It'll be way closer than it needs to be, but yes, they could win if that happens. I mean, I think Notre Dame wins by more than one touchdown, personally. I'm not saying by a lot more than that, but I do think that they could win between 10 and 14. And so if he throws a pick 6, obviously subtract 7 from that, and now it's a real tight game. So can they? Yes. Will they? Really just depends on the situation and how that thing goes.
Right. I mean, are they up by 14
Right.
when it happens?
Right. Exactly.
In the fourth quarter, that kind of thing. It's like I don't think it's a cut and dry scenario. Obviously, the fewer pick 6s your quarterback throws, the greater chance you have to win any game. So now that doesn't mean that you're not going to win if your quarterback, you just don't throw any pick 6s. And,
right.
They'll be fine.
But I mean,
I think there's a greater chance that Weigman throws a pick 6.
Right, absolutely.
Than Riley Leonard.
I mean, how many pick 6s has Riley Leonard thrown in his career? Can't be a whole. I mean,
that's not a stat that's generally
he's thrown 10 interceptions in his entire career.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how many of those are pick 6s, but I feel like I would have remembered that. Leonard pick 6. Let's see what happens. Nothing's coming up, so I'm gonna go with he's never done it.
Good enough for me.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with he's never done it. So I'm not. Look, if I was a an outsider looking in on this, I mean, why would you not think the secondary from Notre Dame has a better chance of picking off Connor Weigman than the secondary for Texas A&M has,
in combination with a better defensive
Leonard.
front as
Right,
well. Like Notre Dame at the very least is great up front and on the back end.
Right.
The linebackers, a little bit of an incomplete question right now because again, we haven't seen them in any actual game action yet, but they've looked pretty good just in certain, situational type stuff that we were able to see them in practice. But again, not much real contact type stuff. But my point is, between the pressure that the front should get against a suspect Texas A&M line and as good as the secondary is, think Xavier Watts floating around back there when Connor Weigman makes a mistake, yanks it, and 0 is heading back the other way. I could easily see a situation like that coming up.
Me too.
Father David, in light of Vince's big bing, bang, boom, baby, it's almost a tongue twister.
Yeah, baby.
Catchphrase taking the sports world by storm. What's your favorite sportscaster catchphrase?
Oh, Father David, I appreciate that very much. And I don't know.
Bang, boom, baby.
Do you even know what that's from? What I've been doing?
I finally figured it out. Like, this is from your Prize Picks thing,
yes.
right?
Yeah.
Because I saw some people on the boards last week trying to
really?
figure out what your favorite catchphrase or like the favorite thing that you say. And someone said this, and I'm like, and I did it. It took me a while to think about it because I obviously, like, when I'm posting my podcast, I paste it in there, but
yeah, me too.
It's just the same ad over and over again.
Yes.
I've never actually listened to it.
And why would you? Yeah. Seriously, why would you? But I did it the first time, just kind of on a whim, made it up. And I purposely have put it in the next 3 that I've done just to see if anybody's paying attention. And they have been. And I appreciate that, Father David. But back to the question. What's your favorite sportscaster catchphrase? Do you have one?
I'm trying to think. The one that I remember the most from like when I was in college as a young aspiring sportscaster was listening to Kevin Harlan when he was still the radio voice of the Kansas City Chiefs. And his big thing was, "Oh baby, what a play." So that was like an early favorite there. Like the Keith Jackson, "Whoa Nelly." I think that "Whoa Nelly," like that. I think that might, like, I can't think of a lot of sort of modern catchphrases.
Yeah. Modern ones, no. Okay, so I got a couple here. I do like the Brent Musburger, "You're looking live."
You are looking live.
That's I like that one. Harry Carey, "Holy cow," is definitely high on the list for me.
Good one. See, I didn't even think about that.
Yep. Right. And
I've even got Harry Carey back there behind me someplace. So.
Brian NY in our chat had "Holy cow." Completely agree with that. And then he goes with "He gone." You can't have Cubs and White Sox, number one. And number two, those are the White Sox ones are horrible. Sorry. But anyway, that's a different conversation for maybe that conversation is perfect for right now. I'm not sure. But it may sound like I'm kissing up to the host, but I love it when you're ringing the bell. I did too many games with you, and you ring the bell.
Ring the bell. Yeah, that's not I don't know.
I'm just saying.
Because I'm trying to think of, like, "You Are Looking Live" is a good one. We saw some people say "Hello Friends," the Jim Nance.
Oh yeah,
thing.
Yes, it's a good one.
I think Tony Romo needs to come up with his own catchphrase because he's just kind of all over the place, with whatever happens to, fall out of his mouth at any given time. I think Romo or Brady need a catchphrase.
I'm still very interested to see how Tom Brady does in the booth. I'm sure he'll be fine, but he didn't have a very good college education, so I'm a little worried about how good he is from a verbal standpoint. But we'll see.
Brody, going back to the question, he said maybe he phrased the question poorly. He should have asked if Notre Dame could overcome giving up a special teams or defensive score.
Yeah, I think they can overcome it. I just think that would make the margin for error razor thin.
Yeah.
That's what I think.
Yeah. I would agree with that. I think that if they give up either one of those, like a score by Texas A&M special teams or the Texas A&M defense, the game is going to be much closer than it needs to be.
Yes.
At that point.
Yes. And that would bring it to a point, in my opinion, where another mistake by Notre Dame could cost them the game. Like, I think they've got enough juice to make a major mistake like that and still win. But that now you're like, okay, even a minor mistake could cost you the game at that point. Like that's how I feel about it.
Right. Because I feel like Texas A&M's best chance to make a big play offensively is going to be like with the Colin Klein offense that he's bringing from Kansas State, a lot of running and stuff like that. Like can they, because of the linebackers, of the Notre Dame linebackers and the relative inexperience they have, like can they hit, like the one-off big run similar to what Ohio State did last year, for example? Because Notre Dame kept Ohio State bottled up 99% of the night, but they gave up that one big run, and that ended up being the difference in the game. So, like, whereas Notre Dame, like Riley Leonard has a chance to make a big play, anytime the ball is in his hands. Jeremiah Love does. And, again, you're going to see more speed from the wide receivers as well. I think Notre Dame's going to have a much better chance to be making big chunk pass plays down the field than what Texas A&M is going to have.
Completely agree. Yeah.
Sloppy Joe says he'd be shocked if A&M's offense scores more than 10.
I don't know if I would be shocked, but I don't predict them scoring much more than 10. I'll say that. And by the way, I had my researcher get into it, and Riley Leonard has never thrown a pick six.
Okay. Glad your researcher helped out.
A researcher named Brian Driscoll. Because he knows all that stuff. So I literally asked him. So thank you, Brian, for the backup.
What is this? Where did this come from? I didn't just say this, did I? I never go deep on freshmen, according to
I don't
DK.
know about that.
I don't know. That kind of came out of left field.
Yeesh. I've never heard you say that ever.
I don't either. Sean Kelly, how about NFL question?
Go.
Predictions for offensive and defensive rookie of the year.
Well, I'll tell you what. Bo Nix was just named starter in the Denver Broncos. I think he's got a shot.
Okay.
Quarterbacks always have a shot of winning those kinds of awards. I'm trying to think of other people with a shot. I guess Caleb Williams has a shot. I'll throw it out there.
Gonna say, shocked that you're not mentioning your new favorite quarterback.
I've got his jersey upstairs. No, I don't.
I'm gonna go Xavier Worthy, Kansas City Chiefs wide receiver, paired up with Patrick Mahomes.
I like that.
Little flashback to Tyreek Hill with the speed that he's got.
Defensive side of the ball. That's a little tougher, isn't it?
It is. And I'm trying to, think is his first name Leatu Latu, the UCLA edge rusher? He's with the Colts now. He was drafted somewhere, I think, in the middle of the first round. I'm not sure if that's exactly how you say his first round, his first name. I didn't have a pronunciation guide before this mailbag show started. So
fair.
I'm not exactly sure how to say his first name, but Latu is his last name. So that's to me one of the first guys who comes to mind from a defensive perspective.
Fair enough. I pulled up the LA Chargers depth chart, and I was really hoping to see Cam Hart in the cornerback depth chart, but I don't see him. So I guess I can't say Cam Hart, even though I want to go down that road defensively. I'm just trying to think of other defense. I don't know. Once teams graduate or once players graduate onto the NFL and they're not on a team that I follow, they're dead to me.
Gets tougher. Yep.
It is what it is, right?
Yep. All right. Well, Vince, are you ready for rapid fire?
Oh, I've been kind of dreading it. I'm not going to lie, but I'm always ready for rapid fire. I'm dreading it because I don't have an answer to number one.
It's kind of exciting. That you're on the edge of your seat a little bit, and you're not really sure which way that you want to go with 10 days to go until Notre Dame football begins. Fill in the blank. Excluding Riley Leonard, the player Notre Dame can least afford to lose this season is blank.
The reason this question is so difficult for me is because Notre Dame does have tremendous depth at most positions, right? And Riley Leonard's the obvious answer. So I'm glad you took that out.
Yes.
So I'm going to go Jack Kaiser. And I know that might not necessarily be a hugely popular answer, and I understand why people might say that. But I think not only is his production going to be very good, I just don't think you can take that leadership off the field. He is the clear leader on the defensive side of the ball. I know there's 4 defensive captains, but he's the one with the green sticker, for the communication. He's the guy that you just see on Al Golden's face. Like, he's my guy. You know what I mean? And those other guys have a lot of talent. I get that. I just think losing Jack Kaiser would be extremely detrimental right in the middle of that defense.
I'm going to go with the defensive side of the ball as well. Interesting. Sloppy Joe says Emil Wagner. I mean, it could be like, if you lose another tackle, that could really be pretty detrimental. I'm not going to go Emil Wagner yet because I'd like to see just how good he is in an actual game before I, pin that kind of thing on him. I just think, to me, it's Benjamin Morrison, because even though we've seen good things from the freshman corners during training camp, and Mike Mickens and Al Golden have both said good things about him, and I think Marcus Freeman might have last week as well. I still just think that where Notre Dame is in the secondary, Benjamin Morrison is still like the most key guy. Now, few people said Xavier Watts, and he's going to be very vital as well. But I think that like you still like Adon Schuler is still, he's still going to have something to say about that. Like I think we're still going to see Adon Schuler and Rod Hurd. I just think it's Benjamin Morrison because of the depth and what they have in terms of experience at that corner position. I think that that's where they could get in trouble. Again, kind of mirroring the Riley Leonard thing, against the majority of teams, they could go Christian Gray and Jaden Mickey out there, or, maybe even Leonard Moore. Because, I mean, let's not forget about the freshman season that Benjamin Morrison himself ended up having a couple of years ago. Like, against the majority of the schedule, you're probably going to be okay. But when you're talking about the elite teams, I think that for me, it's Benjamin Morrison.
I like that one. Yeah, I like that one. That their depth would be strained at that point. There's no doubt.
Yeah. DK says Ashton Craig. What do you think about that one?
Wow, you have no faith in Pat Coogan, DK? Come on, man. But I love Ashton Craig. I love it. I mean, as much as I think that would be very difficult to replace and all of those different things, at this point, the way things are looking, I would just put offensive line down. You know what I mean? Like, you lose anybody in the offensive line,
yeah,
the sky will officially be falling for everyone surrounding the program. You know what I mean? Like, people will lose their minds at that point.
Except apparently there's some kind of surplus of guards.
That's what I hear.
Based on the way these guys.
That's what I hear. But, I mean, can you imagine if another person gets hurt on the offensive line? People are just going to lose it. They're going to lose it.
I like this, though. Salty said, Notre Dame coaching praise for the same exact player. Freeman, fantastic. Golden, outstanding. Denbrock needs a lot of work.
That is accurate right there. I love that.
Very accurate.
That's funny.
Has your ceiling, Vince, for Notre Dame football changed since training camp started?
No, it hasn't. I mean, I understand the question marks. I understand why people are nervous about, next Saturday. I get all of those things. But at the end of the day, people are freaking out about a guy who look, Charles Jagasaw is a loss. I'm not saying he's not, right? He had one career start, I believe, right? So we can assume that he was going to be really good. He probably was, but he's got one career start. You didn't lose Riley Leonard. You didn't use Xavier Watts. You didn't lose, all of these guys that you're expecting to lead this team to a playoff run, right? And so while it may not be maybe as smooth in week one, you got a bunch of weeks to get it right. And I think at the end of the day, there is talent at the offensive line, in that offensive line room. They're going to get it figured out. No, barring any more injuries, my expectation has not changed at all.
Like my certainty about the ceiling maybe has dipped. If I'm 1 to 10, maybe it's dipped a couple of points, 1.5, 2 points, just because I have no idea to what level that offensive line is going to perform in week one, in what's going to be a crucial road game. Because you lose week one, like everyone's talking about, the schedule and everything. Like, you lose week one, and we're going to get to road stuff here in just a second, but there aren't going to be many opportunities to make up that ground when it's all said and done. You absolutely have to win out at that point. The ceiling for me for Notre Dame is whatever Riley Leonard can take them to. That, to me, is the ceiling.
Seriously.
So, again, like you talk about, you went out and got a veteran quarterback who had NFL grades a year ago, to be the guy who can help you beat the better teams on the schedule and win playoff games, and not just get to playoff games. So to me, the ceiling is whatever Riley Leonard can lead him to. So
That's fair.
So no, my overall ceiling has not changed yet. I'll probably, I'll just have to reserve a space for, what'll that be? September 2nd, when we come in 2 days after the Notre Dame Texas A&M game, and we'll kind of revisit and see where we are at that point. Because again, we just haven't seen these guys do it live yet. And I'm specific to the offensive line. I'm confident virtually in everything else. There are just enough obvious questions that I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Sloppy Joe says, imagine what will happen if Knapp wins the job, has a false start in the first series. Notre Dame fans will absolutely lose it.
They sure will. Coogan wouldn't have done that. He's a veteran. Tosh Baker wouldn't have done that. He's a veteran.
Right.
That's
after everyone was anti-Tosh Baker.
That's what you'll hear
before.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So Notre Dame did play poorly on the road last year. Scale of 1 to 10. What's your confidence that will not be an issue this season?
My initial gut was to say an 8. I'm lowering it to a 7 because one of the things that I'm most confident about with Marcus Freeman is that he doesn't just give lip service. He really does challenge everything. I mean, that is who he is, and we've seen it. We have seen him challenge everything. We've seen him change the way he does things, right? And I think that he knows where his weaknesses are, and I think he will try very hard to fix what he feels is a weakness, right? The other thing is, I'm not so sure that the road games are all that challenging overall. Yes, you've got Texas
with the
A&M,
exception of the first one
and the last one, depending on
what.
I mean, look, there's a long time between now and November 30th, and who knows what USC is going to look like at that point. So I'll just leave it there, right? Your hardest, even if they're great, your hardest away game is going to be in week 1. There's no doubt about it. Week 1 is your test, right? I think Marcus Freeman has shown he can get a team up for the big game week 1. I think he's proven that, right? And so I do feel good about I do feel good about Freeman getting the team where they need to be, here all the time, away or home. So I'm giving it a 7 just because you never know, but I do feel fairly confident about it.
I'm in between a 7.5 and an 8 is kind of where I'm sitting. And it's basically for the same reasons, because Marcus Freeman, as a young head coach, already has a track record of, as you said, being able to, he's very self-aware, recognizes what the weaknesses are. Just like season 1, in the moment, he had to change the messaging and change the way, they were going about things after those 2 losses, and ultimately turned around a season that could have turned into a total train wreck as a young first-time head coach. And so one of the things that he did this offseason was he spent some time with some different NFL coaches, when he was doing part of his tour of the country and stuff like that. And this is one of the things that he talked about. How do you go about preparing for the road? He does a really good job of that, of addressing what needs to be addressed. And so
one of the things I love about him, to be perfectly honest with you, as a head coach.
Yeah, exactly. So I don't think it's going to be a big issue like what we saw last year. I mean, obviously Louisville and Clemson are the 2 biggies. I mean, those were the 2 losses, but even then, Duke came right down to the wire. That was a road game as well. They ended up winning, but that came right down to the wire. They obviously had to come back to win that one. So I was going to say reasonably. I think I'm more than confident.
Yeah,
I'll have that taken care of. And however you say this, Islam 4.
I sell
the
them.
Coach continuity is
money.
Key. Yeah. Oh, I sell for money. Okay. He says the coach continuity is key. Hopefully the players have bought into the coaches are coaching. And I think that there's probably something to that as well. You do have great continuity, and essentially everyone on the staff now, has been hired by Marcus Freeman. basically,
Right.
you know, like compared to what year one was like.
Good point. Very good point.
Yeah. So Oklahoma State has announced that they're putting QR codes on the back of player helmets this season. The codes are going to link to a donation page for the school's NIL fund. Fans watching the games on TV are going to be able to, you know, bring out your phone and scan the QR code right there on the screen, capture the codes, and they can put money into the team's NIL value throughout the season. So what do you think of this idea, Vince?
You want to talk about thinking outside the box. I mean, I think this is genius marketing, to be perfectly honest with you. I don't know how much money they're actually going to be able to get from this particular venture. I mean, you know, if you don't play, they're not going to be showing the back of your helmet. That's for sure. And I think seeing the back of everybody's helmet is going to be complicated, you know, from a TV standpoint. And it's not like, TV, stations are going to be going out of their way to make sure you get a good shot of the QR code on the back of the helmet. But I give them credit for thinking outside the box. I dig it. I absolutely dig it. The same way that I dig, Baylor's coaches wearing T-shirts that says "We pay players."
We pay players.
Like
that's right.
I mean, you gotta think outside the box. And look, I'll even give Coach Prime credit because on the back of their practice uniforms, it's got like their Twitter handle or their Instagram or whatever. Okay, I mean, look.
Big 12's got it rolling in that direction, I guess. Huh?
This is a new day and age. I think you got to think outside the box a little bit, and I think it's a good idea. To be perfectly honest with you,
and just to reiterate for Stymie, this is not like you're not going to be able to you're at the game in the stands, you're not going to be able to get out your phone and do it because he's saying he struggles to get a signal on his phone at games. This is you're in your living room and the game is on TV. And essentially what you're going to have to do is like if they, get a close up of the back of somebody's head, you can scan the QR code. And now this isn't going to go to the individual player.
Oh, it goes into a giant fund.
It just all goes into a
so they don't need.
Okay. So it doesn't matter whose QR code you scan. And I'm sure especially early on, like ESPN or Fox or whoever's televising the games, I'm sure the first game,
that's a good call.
They're going to, do some kind of story about it. And you'll probably be, like if you were watching an Oklahoma State game, you just, hit pause on your DVR or whatever. And the QR code's right there and just boom, scan it real quick and roll on with the game. So I think it's a pretty cool idea. And when everyone's trying to come up with ways to get ahead in NIL, I think it's a great idea by Oklahoma State.
I'm actually on board, and I think it's a great idea. I think you and I need to have QR codes on the show.
You're right.
Just put it like right there, like right in the corner. And if you feel so inclined, go ahead and scan that QR code, and we will put your money to good use.
I think that's a fantastic idea.
I know how to make them. We do it all the time now.
Yeah. Like, all these people complaining about ads and shows and stuff like that. If we put a QR code up, would you literally put your money where your mouth is?
Right.
If you didn't like the
QR codes are the thing these days. I will say that I've gone to multiple high school events where they got a QR code where you buy the tickets. Like that's the program, bloop, and then it takes you to a website. And now you got the program for the day. You know what I mean? Like people aren't printing anymore, man. Like QR code it up. Let's go.
Father David says no, he wouldn't.
That's fair. Father David is a man.
He'll be passing the plate. Yes, that's right.
He takes the money in. He doesn't give it out, which I appreciate. And I also appreciate the fact that he's probably in the same, financial structure as teachers. So Father David, you are absolved from the QR code, my friend.
By the way, Oklahoma State is going to open its season same day as Notre Dame, August 31st. They're going to play defending FCS national champion South Dakota State. Vince, I don't know. Playing FCS opponents is one thing, but would you ever want your team to play an actual FCS powerhouse?
Not in game one. Seriously.
I wouldn't want to play them in game anything.
Look,
like what's Appalachian State remembered for all these years later? Beating Michigan.
100%. Yeah, and that was before they were a D1 program, right? So yeah, that kind of launched them into the
exactly. That's what I'm saying. They were FCS back then. Yeah.
Honestly, I would not want. I mean, look, you don't want to duck competition, and I get it, but teams aren't playing FCS teams to get competition. They're playing FCS teams to get reps. So if that's your strategy going into a game, I mean, you don't want to potentially lose. And South Dakota State's a legit program, Sean. I mean, they are a legit program year in and year out.
They're back-to-back defending FCS champs.
You knew what you were getting when you scheduled them. Okay. So I guess hats off to them for scheduling them, but I would probably avoid that if I could.
I wouldn't want any of that. Yeah. And I mean, because like before South Dakota State, it was North Dakota. Was it North Dakota or North Dakota State? One of those, like just to run those Dakotas, man. Like there's not much the Dakotas are known for, but all of a sudden they become FCS powerhouses.
They don't have D1. I mean, they don't have Power 4 programs in their states. So unless they're going to go out of state to another program, they're going to get a lot of really good players. I mean, that's just the long and the short of it, right? I mean, you go where you can go, you know what I mean? And so that they get a lot of really good players.
Thanks for the super chat, Patrick. He says, for just $1 a day, you too can help a starving college player eat.
I mean, I don't think college players are starving, but just going to throw that out there.
I think
it's hilarious, frankly.
He's joking.
Yeah.
John says he hopes Jesse is doing better today. I haven't talked to him today. He did text me once about something completely unrelated to the car. So I'm assuming. It's funny. I saw someone in Cleveland tweet today that apparently there are a lot of car thefts and break-ins going on in the downtown Cleveland area these days. So I don't think Jesse's car was alone.
It's funny.
Whole situation.
Of course, I go upstairs yesterday and my wife's like, how come you guys ran long? I go, well, it was quite the story at the front of the show. And I told her what happened. She's like, oh, yeah, those Hondas. Yeah, they're easy to break into. I'm like, I guess I've been living under a rock.
She knew too, huh?
She did. I had no idea. It's funny.
She got out her blue book. She's like, nope, no blue book value there. Moving on.
That's right. Oh, that's great.
So ESPN is going to reboot the Sports Reporters. I don't know if you ever watched it. The original Sunday morning show is hosted by Dick Schaap. It featured 3 sports reporters from around the nation discussing various topics. Dick Schaap's son, Jeremy, is reportedly going to host the rebooted version that's been gone from ESPN for a few years. So were you like a regular Sports Reporters watcher? Where were you on the original Sports Reporters, Vince?
So I'm afraid this is going to come off wrong, and I'm okay. I guess I'm okay with that at this point.
Here we go. I'm gearing up for it.
I was incredibly bored by the Sports Reporters.
Really? Okay.
Incredibly bored. Like and this is going to sound awful, and I'm sorry, but it was like, I remember as a kid, turning them on and watching and being like, what do these nerds know anything about football or baseball or what? And it's just like a bitch session. Like, that's what it felt like to me when I was a kid. I'm like, shut up, nerd. And I would change the channel.
Shut up, nerd.
Isn't that terrible? But that's the memory I have of the Sports Reporters.
That's funny because I think the heyday of the show was probably early to mid 90s, like when I was still in college.
Sure. And that was when I was in high school.
That's I would be watching the Sports Reporters every Sunday morning. Now there was a point where it did kind of just seem like they just turned into a bunch of grumpy old men, I guess, which is
maybe that's what I remember. I don't know.
Which is what we all turn into, I guess, at some point, right?
Yeah. Well, but some sooner than others.
But that's right. Like Lupica and Mitch Albom.
Yes.
And, I think at some point it felt like, like a couple of them in particular, it's like they're preaching at you, more than they're actually just, but I think like Wilbon used to be on there. Kornheiser used to be on there.
I like listening to those guys during PTI. So, Yeah.
Fred says, Bill Conlon, I used to think that he was pretty good too. Columnist for the Philadelphia Daily News. But you might want to Google Bill Conlon and see what came of him. I hear there were some just kind of weird accusations about Bill Conlon, kind of later on. So,
yeah. So Andy Saylor says it was Lupica. He was awful. I remember Lupica. Bit
of a blowhard. Yeah. Bit of a blowhard.
And I mean, he just screams nerd. You know what I mean?
And he would be the one, he would get to guest host from time to time, if Shap or, who is it? John Saunders was the guy after Shap passed away.
Yes.
Saunders took over. And then, when one of the others was gone, Lupica would get to be the guest host, and he was just even more unbearable.
Yes.
He was the actual host of the show. That's when the show was the worst, was when Lupica was the host, honestly.
I bet you those are because I vividly remember Lupica just going on these rants and just screaming about things. And it's like, dude, chill out.
Bob Ryan, another good one from Boston. That was a good one.
See, I remember Bob Ryan from the show with the points.
Round the Horn.
Round the Horn. That's where I kind of remember Bob Ryan from.
Right.
To be honest.
Mitch Albom, Adam, was the Detroit reporter, and he's the guy who wrote a couple best-selling books.
And Lupica writes sports books for kids.
Yeah.
Which are actually really good. They're
they?
Some more like teen novels, but about sports and stuff like that. And so when I was teaching middle school, we would have reading days or whatever, and I would grab those books and I would read them, and the kids would talk about them. But he's actually a really good writer when it comes to stuff like that. It's just really annoying on that show.
I'm kind of interested, I've seen that, and I realize no one's going to have 100% approval rating, but I've seen, Joe Buck, for example, might be somebody they have, is one of the guest panelists and stuff like that. It's the world has changed so much just in terms of, obviously newspapers aren't what they used to be. So I'm curious to see what kind of, who the guest would be that they put in those seats.
Yes. And with
at the very least, it might make a good podcast.
And people who really like that show were actually interested in what these guys had to say. And the problem is nowadays, everybody has an avenue to say exactly what they're thinking immediately on Twitter, right? And so some of these opinions are going to be outdated by the time that you get to hear them on the show, because you said, the world is a different place than it was back then. And there were a lot of other options, or there are a lot more options now than just to watch these guys, scream and yell at each other.
Yeah, I mean, it was the precursor to both PTI and Around the Horn and even, First Take.
Right.
It was the first show, really, that now I think the origin of it goes back to whatever they called that show in Chicago that was on one of the Chicago stations.
Gotcha.
I wasn't around here, so I can't tell you what it was called, but it was Chicago was doing something similar to that, and then ESPN kind of took it, did it on a national
of course they
level. Did. But that was kind of the entry point for writers into TV. Sports reporters into TV, and obviously the whole the whole media landscape is so different now that everyone's either doing a podcast or on TV, or there are very few people who are actually just writing right now.
That's fair.
Beezer slipping a late question in. Who's the most overhyped player coming into 2024? He says for him, it's Nico from Tennessee. I've seen him on so many Heisman favorite lists, only played a bowl game. Let's see him play real ball first. I'm down with that. And that's why I'm not sold right now on Tennessee as even a college football playoff contender, because you've got a completely, as talented as he's supposed to be, a completely inexperienced quarterback who's going to be running the show there at Tennessee. So I would jump on that as probably the most overhyped, because it seems like Tennessee is still ranked relatively high, even with a quarterback who has no real experience.
I think
other ideas?
Noah Fafita is getting a lot of hype down at Arizona to be a dude. I think that's going to be tough with a new staff and a lot of new happening down in Arizona, new league, a lot of new. I would be Yeah, Arizona seems to be kind of a darling pick for a lot of people right now in the Big 12. I just don't see it. I just don't see it.
Yeah. The sports writers on TV is what they called it.
Okay.
Yeah. The sports writers on TV was that Chicago show. That's what they called it. Thank you very much. However you say that. I sell them for. I sell them for dollars. I don't know.
Sell them for money, baby.
Carson Beck. We got to vote for Carson Beck. Will Howard's another good one. Like, he's a good quarterback, but
there's a lot of people saying he's not even going to finish the season as the starter.
Wow.
Which is interesting to me. So I don't know if he's getting overhyped or if he's maybe getting underestimated. I'm not 100% sure on that.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
So there's people saying he's not going to finish the season as the starter, but there are others who think that he's going to win the Heisman Trophy. So,
okay.
Go figure.
Probably going to be someplace in between.
Fill in the blank. It's blank that Nicolas Cage is going to play John Madden in an upcoming biopic.
Did everybody else say they couldn't do it? Like, that was my first initial thought on this entire thing. Like, Nicolas Cage has done a lot of really good movies. I don't mind Nicolas
Oscar
Cage.
winner.
Yeah,
Oscar winner.
I really don't mind Nick Cage. I think he does good work, right? National Treasure is one of my favorite series, 2 movies, Face Off, I thought, with John Travolta, I actually thought it was kind of an underrated movie.
I mean, you don't think his experience in Face Off, prepped him for this? Because he was essentially, trying to play Travolta in his body, kind of thing.
Like, from a physical standpoint, is he going to gain 150 pounds? Like, look, John Madden was never a skinny dude. He just never was, right? I mean, that just wasn't his build. And I just had such a hard time picturing Nick Cage as John Madden. Like, that is very, very, very difficult for me. There had to be other people.
I'm having a hard time picturing it as well. There were other people. Do you want to know who one of the top candidates was?
Yes, I do.
Will Ferrell.
That would have been a comedy.
Is that what you want? So, like, at least you've got a serious actor in Nick Cage. Like, Cate Blanchett played Bob Dylan. Did you think that was going to work? I never saw that movie.
I didn't either.
Did you see the Elvis movie?
Yes.
Tom Hanks playing Colonel Tom Parker.
Yeah.
Like, there was when you talk about weight, Tom Hanks is a skinny guy.
True.
Colonel Tom Parker was a big guy.
It is amazing, though. Tom Hanks can just morph into different. I mean, he was Mr. Rogers. Like, I'll give Tom Hanks a lot of credit. He's done a lot of actual people and made it his own. But I don't know. Like, I would have rather seen, I don't know, a lot of different people. I don't know. Maybe he'll Stymie actually stole exactly what I was thinking. I think Vince Vaughn, because he's done comedies, he's done drama, he's got a bigger stat. Like, John Madden wasn't just this way. He was also this way. Like, he's a big dude.
Mm-hmm.
I think Vince Vaughn could have done a really good job with that.
I'm actually kind of anxious to see it. Like everyone else, I was very skeptical. It's like, Nick Cage, really? That's who you like. And Father David says that I call him. I mean, again, he won an Oscar. Like,
I think Nick Cage could be a serious actor.
Right. Now, he went off the rails for several years, but
Fair.
I think when we were talking about National Treasure, he's made a little bit of a comeback with some of the stuff that he's done in the last few years. There was a movie that he did about a year ago, and I can't think of what it was. It was like he was like a professor at a small college or something like that, and all these people started having dreams about him. In the movie, like, the first half of the movie was really good. It really took a turn and didn't like the way they ended up wrapping it up. But bottom line, can Nick Cage overact? Yeah.
Yes.
But
you can.
I just, okay, Vince Vaughn was your idea. I have a hard time because of, like someone said, Frank Caliendo, and Frank Caliendo was actually trending right after this Nick Cage announcement came out because, it's like, is it going to be a parody or are they going to attempt to make a real movie?
Right.
About
the problem
the guy?
is Caliendo is a tiny man. Like,
right.
From a physical nature, like, you need a bigger actor. I mean, yes, there's certain things you can do with camera angles and things like that, but Caliendo he could have fit in John Madden's pocket. You know what I mean? Like, yeah.
Take your hands off the bunny. Con Air.
Con Air is a good movie.
Con Air
is a good movie.
I mean, when they landed that plane on the freaking Las Vegas Strip, come on, man.
How can you not be all in on that? I want to know who's going to play Pat Summerall in the movie.
I don't know, because I heard like just in Pat like that it might be more focused on his actual time coaching the Raiders as in the booth.
So, okay.
So I tried to, I like searched around and tried to find some details. There are no real details on what exactly it's going to be. Josh says Kevin James, and like from a look standpoint, but like you want to talk about like a difference in acting. Like, like again, like is it going to be a comedy or is it going to be an actual attempt, to be a real movie about John Madden?
Yeah, I mean, how can you not? Like he had 2 distinct careers, right? And 3 if you count the video game, and he was instrumental in that video game and how it all came to life and the realities of it and all of in like the playbooks. And so I would love for them to dig into, yes, his coaching career, but then also the video game stuff and then the announcing career like that. I mean, the movie writes itself, in my personal opinion. I just think maybe they should have thought twice about the acting.
And VR says it's supposed to cover development of the game as well.
Cool.
Sounds like you and I might have a movie to watch together when this comes out. So
I am down. We can
reaction.
we could do a movie review. Like I'm down.
For sure.
Think that needs to happen.
Tyler says Kevin James played Sean Payton.
That was awful.
Ryan said, remember when Kevin James played Sean Payton? I never saw that movie. And there's a reason why.
Dude, I can't believe
he played him, but did he play him well?
I can't believe Sean Payton allowed that to happen. I'll just say that. Like it had nothing to do with Sean Payton. Like it was it was just weird. It was just weird. That's the best I can say it. It was just weird. And I don't know how loosely based it was on reality or whatever. But I just feel like they're like, hey, Sean Payton, we'll write you a $3 million check.
Wasn't it about like the year he got suspended and he was coaching his kids' team or something?
It became like the OC for his kids' football team. And then that became like a Disney movie, essentially. Like they were this ragtag, terrible team. And then, here comes Sean Payton. And all of a sudden they become like, the Pee-wee version of the Saints. It's like, it was just not a good movie. I'm sorry.
You know who would actually probably, just like from who would make a good John Madden is like Tony Romo, just like with the weird things that they both say.
Right.
And then boom and doink and, whatever else.
Right.
And
yes.
That's kind of the direction that Romo's gone the last couple of years.
DK says he wants to hear Nicolas Cage say turducken. I know, right? Like, yeah. And that's the problem with a John Madden movie, right? You could go the complete comedy angle. I mean, you could, and you could go that direction. But there's also he was a really good businessman, you know what I mean? And he was a really good coach, won a Super Bowl. So like you do have to hit on those things, so I don't know. I'm fascinated, I guess, by this whole thing. I guess I need to see it.
Yeah. Probably a year and a half, 2 years from now. So
exactly.
Some time.
We'll forget about it for a while. And
yeah, exactly. And then it'll be out. I bet you he gets good reviews. I bet you he gets better reviews than we think that
he'll definitely get better reviews than Kevin James as Sean Payton.
So. I will be curious, will he gain the weight? Will they do prosthetic weight on him? How, will he, will he go full De Niro on this thing or what's he gonna
think
do?
about 1970s John Madden with the hairstyle.
With the hair, and he had the pork chop mustache,
right.
Sideburns.
Yes.
The whole thing.
Like, oh my goodness. Okay.
All right. Well, that is going to do it for tonight. Man, well, people are really firing off on.
I love this.
Nicolas Cage. Like,
see?
Nick Cage, I know he's had a really bad overacting phase of his life, but go back to Leaving Las Vegas. Go watch Leaving Las Vegas. That's the actor that's inside of Nick Cage. Whatever else may have kind of been between then and now. Like, watch Leaving Las Vegas. That's a really good movie. And I'm not talking about Viva Las Vegas with what's her name? Carrie Bradshaw. The Sarah Jessica Parker. Like not that one. It is funny. He's done a couple of Vegas movies though. but really more than one when you think, because again, like when you think about Con Air and landing the plane on the Strip and that whole thing, a lot of Vegas in there. But all right, well, that's going to do it. And who is going to play Al Davis, by the way?
There's a lot of people in John Madden's life that I'm going to need to know who's going to play those people.
Yeah, it almost kind of seems like maybe Nick Cage would have been better suited for Al Davis than John Madden. I don't know.
Salty did bring up John Goodman, which 15 years ago.
Yeah, he's probably a little too old now.
He's just a little too old.
That would be
right
like
now.
later life John Madden for John Goodman.
Yeah, and John Goodman, I don't know how well he's doing, right? And actually, he lost a ton of weight, so that's going to be part of a problem too. But he's 72, so that it'd be very tough for him to play 1970s John Madden.
His speech kind of seems like it's altered. Like if you've heard him, like John Goodman, if you've heard him talk the last couple years.
Agreed.
Yeah. All right. Well, tomorrow's the We In, We Out show. So head to the New Champions Lounge. There's a thread on there. Post your questions for We In and We Out for Thursday's show. We have a lot of fun doing that, and hopefully look forward to keeping We In and We Out going out over the course of the season. We'll kind of see. We'll kind of play it by ear and see what kind of stuff we were talking about. The different. We're less than a week away from our first game week being here, Vince, and then we get into the flow of the season and it just starts hopping.
Let's roll, baby. Let's roll.
Yep. So get your questions in on that New Champions Lounge for Thursday's We In and We Out show. Otherwise, Vince, thanks again for the third straight day.
Yeah, man.
I will talk to you again very soon. We'll talk to everybody else hopefully tomorrow on IB Nation Sports Talk. Hit the like button before you leave.